92 degrees, mid-July, Farmington River. We're going to investigate the anatomy of a summer pool. Now, if we're taking a look at this pool, we have to imagine that any trout in the pool are probably going to be right up there where that spill in is, with their nose buried in the white water. They could also be in the current tongues just off that. The water here is pretty warm in this part of the Farmington River. We're talking about mid-70s, probably high 70s. And as we get into the pool, the water's going to warm up. That's where it's going to be the coolest. This isn't a shallow pool. You can see that we've got water depth in here of maybe 5-6 feet in places, and deep enough for a river beaver to have a little house. And maybe we'll go over and investigate that. I haven't seen him swimming around, so maybe it's abandoned. And then the pool snakes its way down across a big hunk of granite toward its outflow. In total, the pool is probably 70 yards long, and it's surrounded by a steep drainage like the entire Farmington River is, all the way from the top to the bottom of the Farmington. There's pretty steep drainage, especially the top half of it. But there could be some fish in the spill out, and if there are, they're probably going to be bass along the southern edge of the pool, but there could be bass on the inside of that tail too. But we won't know until we get out there, so let's find out what's going on in this summer pool on the Farmington River.
Sometimes everybody gets surprised, and I've been surprised more than most, I guess. And as I entered the amber-stained water, I expected to see some fish, probably some bass especially. And in this slack portion of the pool, I immediately find myself not disappointed. There's about a 2-pound smallmouth with about a pounder following it. And then all of a sudden, up on my left comes a beautiful brook trout just ambling along, not bothered by me in the water at all. Now it was about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon, and the sun was shining through onto the gravel, giving me nice pockets of visibility. And all of a sudden, I swim up on suckers. White suckers and longnose. Now, longnose suckers are a species of special concern, considered threatened in their range on the Connecticut River Basin. But nonetheless, we're looking at a few of them, along with the more common white sucker. And there were lots of them. And there goes a red eye, I call them, or a rock bass. We're going to see a bunch of rock bass. There goes another rock bass. They tend to look like a pumpkin seed. They swim low. We just saw a couple trout swimming. There's another trout. There's another trout. Now, as we go, you're going to have to discern. That's a trout right there. You're going to have to discern from the suckers and the trout. We're going to see a lot of suckers, and we're going to see a lot of trout. And then, other surprises. There goes a trout. There's a sucker. So we're coming up around the bank, and look at that smallmouth. And I get behind the rock because I know that I can sneak up on him. And as I peer over the top of the rock, I am immediately psyched to see suckers, but also rainbows, browns, and brookies a little further up. And you're going to see a bunch of them in just a second. There's your suckers swimming low. And your trout are a chubby-bodied guy that's going to be a little bit higher in the water column. So keep your eyes peeled. Here they come. There goes a bunch of suckers. There they are. I don't know what they were doing. It's not mating season for suckers. It must have been the perfect conditions they were getting. A lot of nymphs floating in there. And they were... I'm going to have... There's trout right there. 1, 2, and there's a regular swarm of trout in front of us right there. Look at all of these rainbows, brookies, and browns. Freeze frame it if you want and blow it up, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Those are trout. It's almost like they just stocked it, but we're talking about late July, and there's no way they just stocked it. I am absolutely shocked at what I just saw, but what I see right here is even worse. Talk about shocking. That was a beaver. Here he comes. Now, I did not even see this beaver when I was diving. I was too busy thinking about the trout, and look at that beaver. I slowed it down for you, swimming along right in front of me, and there's a trout on the right. You're going to say to yourself, how did you not see that? There's a sucker. How did you miss that beaver? I don't know. It was so darn big, I missed it. But we've already got Wild Kingdom here. There's smallmouth, and there's suckers, and there's some more trout, right? And we got a nice mix on the bottom here of sand and gravel and brick-sized rocks, and there's some algae, and it's just amazing the amount of fish that are in this portion of the river. And they're on the right side where the current is weaving its way through the deepest portion of the run. And I think that's why those trout were stacked up there. They were basically taking advantage of the high levels of oxygen. And there goes a smallmouth right there. I'm pretty sure that was a smallmouth, but it might have been a trout. As I'm moving forward, I come up, and you can see I'm a long way away from the spill end, which is where I expected to find most of the trout. I think the reason they were down current, though, is because it's a summer river. So as that river runs in shallow areas, tumbling over boulders and across its runs, it's warming up quick, so that the water that, you would think would be coolest, and of course it's got a lot of oxygen because of all the tumbles, is actually warmer. So the trout are dipped in where the water's the right temperature and carrying the right amount of oxygen. So I get up here, I'm really stunned that I didn't find any rainbows in there with their faces poked into the white water. And it was pretty reasonable current there. But I do find our friends, the larvae, that are going to hatch into flies of some sort that I will use to try to catch the trout or bass who fall victim to my approach, as you will. Anyways, there's a lot of nymphs, and you notice that the insect larvae are way up in the faster portion of the current, which is always pretty cool. So now you can see I'm sitting up right here looking at the river, and I say, I'm just going to let the current carry me down toward that beaver house or beaver lodge. And you might be thinking, aren't you afraid you're going to get chowed by that beaver? And as I just said, I didn't even see that beaver. So if I had known that that was an active beaver house, I wouldn't be doing what I'm going to do in a moment. But right now, I'm sneaking back toward where I found the trout. Now I'm looking down at a sucker, and there's a couple others there too. You can see they're just swimming in the current, using as little energy as they possibly can. The guy that's coming toward us is a smallmouth, and I find 3 smallmouth. I find that smallmouth are pretty curious, and if you're diving with them, they'll come right up and investigate what you're doing, and you can even feed them by hand if you want. I've actually carried a lure on a piece of fishing line and caught them by just dangling it in front of them, which is kind of mean, I guess, but I wanted to see if it worked. So at this point, my plan is I'm going to sneak around the left side and try to get behind that rock where all those trout were swarming. So I'm kind of taking my time looking down, though, here at what I can see, figuring I'll probably find that swarm of trout looking forward at me. But this is where I get the idea there's a smallmouth, decent-sized smallmouth. I am going to sneak up on these guys. So I go around, and there's a nice, maybe 2-pound smallmouth, smaller smallmouth, and I head down the river a bit, and now right below me is a big pocket, place where the current is disrupted by a boulder. And look at that smallmouth looking at me. Nice 2-pounder, says, hey, what are you doing? And he's just swimming back and forth like the sucker's out to his left. And now what I want to do is I want to check out those trout as I watch these fish behave. Now, there's a lot of suspended particulates floating. And one of the things that you do when you snorkel is you kick your flippers, and that will kick up strata from the bottom. And I think there's a lot of food in it, and that's why I often have smallmouth bass follow me around underwater, because I'm stirring up crustaceans and whatever they might be eating, probably insect larvae as well. But you can see it's like I'm in a fish tank here. Am I right or wrong? This is crazy. So that boulder right there, I believe, is the one where I'm going to play the little maneuver and show you some really cool trout. So just hang on as I sneak around it. And I drag myself over the ledge here carefully. And right when I stick my head around this, you're going to see what we're waiting to see. and I'm going to get quite close to a couple of them. So right there, out in the distance, I can see a bunch of trout. See them all? Those are all trout. And there goes a rainbow. Now, one thing that fishermen like to do, and look at all those trout, is we look at the fins of trout, and you can tell by the anal and the caudal fins whether or not they're recently stocked fish. And most of these trout that we're looking at here, you're going to notice by looking at the fins, are holdovers. They've been in this river system for a long time. The fins are in really, really good shape, and there's a particularly big rainbow looking at us right there, and I'm getting closer and closer and poking the camera toward him. And look at his fins. Perfect development. That guy's about 22 inches, and there's another behind him, and they're swimming along with the suckers. They're all buddies. Look at them. Look at them go. So it's really cool to get in the water with these fish. And this is one of the reasons why I tell you, learn how to use a snorkel. If you plan on doing this, don't just go in the water with your goggles on, because I can keep my head under the water all the time and I can follow these fish around. Because I'm not popping up and then going down, I'm not making noise. Look at that smallmouth. He's just like, hey. And I'm able to get up close and personal with the fish, not disturbing them, because noise on the surface will end up creating disturbance in their minds. They think something's going on. It's important to be quiet and move slowly. Like here I am now, moving toward that active beaver lodge that I didn't think was active, and we're looking at a bunch of red eyes or rock bass. And they are weird because they stay really close to the bottom, unlike pumpkin seeds, which tend to go up in the water column more. I've noticed that red eyes or rock bass tend to creep along the bottom. They almost remind me of like a rat or a mouse. See how he just flittered across the bottom? So now here we are approaching the beaver lodge, and you can see some pumpkin seeds and shell crackers right there. All mating colors, really pretty in the sun. And under the beaver lodge are some suckers. I mean, where didn't I find suckers on this dive? So I'm looking at the entranceway. Usually there's a couple entrances. There was one on the right, and there's another going to be on the left where the beaver can enter the house and exit the house, the lodge. Now, a beaver lodge is tremendous structure and a nursery area for small fish, which can hide inside the myriad of branches, which is why fishing near these things is particularly good, because the small fish hide inside them and the big fish get in close to try to eat the small fish, and as you can see, a big fish could have got underneath that too. Now here's some smallmouth as I move down toward the spill out of the pool. Just like I thought, as you got closer to the end of the pool, and here I am at the end of the pool, there's a lot more bass in this area. Smaller bass and larger bass. There was a pumpkin seed whipping by. But for whatever reason, the bass like the spill out more than the spill in. Although in this pool, there were a lot of fish everywhere. There were more bass in the spill out. You'll also notice that there aren't any trout in this area. Now in the summer, you're going to find trout in the tail of a pool in the low light conditions, and maybe all night long. I know when I mouse fly, I'll pick them up at the tails of pools quite a lot. And trout, they'll get into that area in the low light conditions because it's cooler then, and there's hatches and there's more potential for action, and it's probably harder to nymph, which is a sight activity. So here I am swimming along the crags on the southwest side of the pool, and you can see all the smallmouth that are just ambling along. Some of them of pretty good size, like that guy who's probably 2.5 pounds. And these cracks in this granite, this bedrock, and these boulders which create caves are perfect ambush spots for these fish, as well as refuges for their prey, crayfish and minnows. So I'm moving along checking it out. Now I start heading back up the pool because I figure one more time I'll check out those trout, see how many of them have gone back up there. I hit the jackpot twice. There goes a rainbow. And I did think to myself, I probably don't want to disturb these trout too much. It is a high-stress time for them with warm water, and I felt kind of bad going back, but I said, hey, it's worth it, one more try. And I'm looking down, I see there's a rock bass sneaking along, and I'm heading back toward that boulder clump where they're all hanging. So for the price of 45 bucks for a set of goggles and snorkel and a pair of flippers is another 30. You can get out and enjoy a summer river and really learn a few things. Like, I got to tell you, I learned a lot on this dive in the case that I didn't expect. There was a trout. I didn't expect that they would be so far back from the spill end. If I were trying to target them, I would have been up close and personal with that trickle down. And no, they were probably 30 yards back. And they were so far back probably because of the temperature of the water. It was warmer water coming in on that particularly warm day. And colder water holds more oxygen, even if the warm water is running over a series of rock ledges and spill ends. Preconceptions are something you have to deal with because you learn what you learn and you carry it around with you. Well, after this dive, I've come to the conclusion that analyzing what's going on in a river is always got to take into account the weather and the temperature. And I'll be doing that for sure from now on, warm or cold.
So that was pretty awesome. I had no idea that I would run into that many fish in this little strip of water. And you'll notice there were some serious big rainbow trout, and they were in a ball. I had no idea what the ball of fish was when I ran into it. This is a summer river, and this is why trout are particularly vulnerable in summer rivers. This is why sportsmen don't fish for trout in summer rivers. We'll get incidental bycatch once in a while, but target the bass. So a summer pool on the Farmington, what a great dive.